All right, we're back from our break. It's 11:04. We're on item 10G. I had to make sure. I'm looking at G here. I'm looking at F. All right, item 10G.
Then G for George.
Public Works Director. Is there a staff presentation?
Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, so I'm going to recuse for this item. I believe my house is about 1,000 feet from the proposed option 3 utility undergrounding district, and it could impact the view and the market value of my house.
All right.
Please don't forget.
We will call you tomorrow.
That's pretty slick.
All right, Councilman Sheikh has recused himself. Go ahead.
Good evening, Shin Furukawa from Public Works. Item 10G is a recommendation for the City Council to select the location of Utility Undergrounding District Number 21 and to set a public hearing date to formally establish the district. Next slide, please. First, a high-level overview of Rule 20A. Rule 20 allows the conversion of existing overhead power lines and other equipment to underground facilities. Rule 20A is a sub-program of Rule 20 that allocates ratepayer-funded work credits to cities for projects that meet eligibility criteria of public interest. Cities annually receive Rule 20A work credit allocations, which must be committed to an active utility underground district, otherwise known as a UUD, established by resolution. Next slide, please. Next, the current state of Rule 20A. In 2021, the CPUC discontinued the Rule 20A program, and so the city has not received any allocations after December 31st of 2022. The city was then notified by SCE in July 2024 that UUD number 18A for Hawthorne Boulevard has been deemed inactive. Therefore, the city now has a Rule 20A balance of approximately 3.9 million, which must be allocated to a new UUD prior to June 1, 2025 to avoid forfeiture of these funds. One last point I didn't list on the slide is that all Rule 20A funds must be expended by December 31st of 2033. Next slide, please. What are the qualifying criteria for Rule 20A undergrounding district? As mentioned earlier, because Rule 20A is funded by ratepayers, UUD must meet the following public interest criteria. 1, eliminate a heavy concentration of overhead power lines. 2, involve a street with a high volume of traffic. 3, benefit a civic or public recreation area of unusual scenic interest. Or 4, be classified as an arterial or major collector street. Historically, Torrance has previously established 21 UUDs, which are shown on the map found in attachment 1 of the council report. Next slide, please. Staff has identified 5 corridors which meet the qualifying criteria for council's consideration for the city's next UUD. They're listed here, and there will be slides with more details for each. They're also shown on a map included as attachment 2 to the council report. Please be aware that this list of corridors is not an exhaustive list. These are being recommended by staff, but there may be other qualifying corridors that the city council may wish to consider. Also note that if the council is interested in one of these corridors, but the estimated costs are too high, council may consider contributing local funds. They may consider reducing the limits of the corridor, or possibly consider undergrounding only the transmission lines or the distribution lines, since these corridors contain both types of lines. The last alternative, however, is not recommended, as that will result in poles that will still need to remain in place to support the lines that will remain. Next slide, please. The first suggested underground district is Madrona Avenue from Civic Center Drive to Torrance Boulevard, adjacent to the Civic Center Plaza. This UUD is the preferred district being recommended by staff, as it will complement the Civic Center Master Plan currently underway, and most importantly, can be constructed within the city's Rule 20A work credit balance. Next slide, please. The second district is an extension of the first one, except it goes from Civic Center Drive all the way down to Carson Street. This UUD has a rough order of magnitude cost of 16 million, so it would require approximately 12.1 million from the city to supplement the Rule 28 credit balance. Next slide, please. The third suggested undergrounding corridor is Crenshaw Boulevard from Del Amo Boulevard to Dominguez Street, adjacent to the Mary Kay Giordano Transit Center. Undergrounding the overhead lines here would provide a aesthetic benefit for the newly opened facility. This UUD has a rough order of magnitude cost of 4.3 million, so it would require approximately 450,000 from the city to supplement the city's Rule 28 credit balance. Next slide, please. The fourth suggested undergrounding corridor is 190th Street from Van Ness Avenue to Western Avenue. This corridor is recommended due to multiple developments currently planned or recently constructed along the corridor, including Ceres Regis Phase 4, Sequoia Commerce Center, and Comstock. This UUD has a rough order of magnitude cost of 9.25 million, so it would require approximately 5.4 million from the city to supplement the city's Rule 28 work credit balance. Next slide, please. The final suggested undergrounding corridor are the same limits as the city's previously established UUD number 18A, which is Hawthorne Boulevard from 186th Street to Del Amo Boulevard. This UUD has a rough order of magnitude cost of 15.5 million, so it would require approximately 11.7 million from the city to supplement the city's Rule 28 work credits. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, tonight staff is requesting that council select the corridor for utility undergrounding district number 21 and to set a public hearing date of March 25th, 2025 to formally establish the district. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Does any members of the public wish to make a comment on this item? Please come to the microphone. Guess he's gone. We'll come to the council. Councilman Matucci.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wondering, and thank you for the presentation, by the way. How long did it take to accumulate those $3.8 million in funds?
I don't know the exact number of years, but as mentioned, they stopped in 2022, and so we won't accrue any further credits.
I think Belazarian has a...
It's Councilman Craig Bilazarian. I believe the accrual rate was about 400 to 550,000 every year, so about 6 or 7 years.
6 or 7, thank you. Okay. I would support number 1, so it would fully be covered, right? I like that. Thank you.
Councilwoman Kalani.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question. It said that the UDD must meet one of the following public interest criteria. I know in some of the older areas of Torrance, there's power lines that go over people's properties. Would that qualify for something like that? And have we looked at that? It just seems dangerous. You know, when it goes down a main street, if it falls, maybe it's not falling into people's backyards and things like that. You don't have kids trying to climb the poles in people's backyards. Would those kind of things qualify, and have we looked into them at all?
Councilwoman Craig Bilazarian. So we kind of focused on some areas of interest that were previously identified in the last 5 to 6 years, and we actually had a letter that was sent to Edison with requesting certain areas. So they kind of responded to us, back to us with those similar interests. There's several areas all over the city where there's power poles in the alleys and there's overhead lines. Those, you know, to determine a district size there would be very complex because of multiple properties, and there's really not necessarily an interest or a visual benefit in most areas because of where they are, and with screening of vegetation and things and trees. These corridors we selected because they're very significant, and the potential with the Civic Center master plan and eliminating this overhead blight, so to speak, could have a significant benefit to the property for potential people who would be interested in what it could be from prior discussions, as we know. So that's where we focused it.
Okay,
but we're open to other suggestions.
And forgive me if I wasn't listening well enough. Does the area just have to be identified, or does it have to be completed within a time frame to not lose the funds?
The funds have to be expended by December 31st of 2033.
Okay, so
The
there's,
request tonight is to identify it. We would come back for a public hearing to formally establish the district. That's the next step.
I understand. Thank you.
I do have a question, Shin. Looks like the easy pick is option one because we got the money and can get it done, and it's near the Civic Center. Is it a good assumption that the cost is really dependent on the length?
The length of the corridor, yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because the other area which we're trying to promote is more usage of the transit center. So if you just reduce the length of the pink bar in the transit center to be right in front of it, it could be an option too, right? It doesn't have to be as long as that one. It will still fit the bill, right?
I mean, we could stop it right at the first pole north of the transit center, not go all the way to Del Amo, if that's what you're suggesting.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I just want to make sure. In my head, I was trying to figure out the numbers. It's just based on the length because I know that's another area we're trying to bring more activity there. I don't know if that would help it, but the Civic Center, similar strategy, Okay. All right. How does the council wish to proceed? I know there's an easy button. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a recommendation to approve area or number one. Yeah, option one, yeah, area one, option one, and to approve items 1, 2, and 3 on the recommendation.
I second that.
Start voting, please. That motion carried with Councilmember Sheikh recused.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Tucci is going to bring Councilman Sheikh back in. We got done too fast. Now we got to wake him up. I could have prolonged this item longer, just start taking a tape measure and measure the Crenshaw strip. Okay, for the record, Councilman Sheikh has joined us. Item H. I think the federal legislative is this. I guess I'm reading this, right?
That is correct, Your Honor.
I'm looking at you, Carlos, and I'm thinking, is Councilman Tucci reading this? But it looks like it's myself. All right. Well, as chair of both the state and federal legislative advocacy committees, I'd like to begin by providing some context for tonight's discussion. The committees met on December 3rd and 4th, 2024, to review and discuss the City of Torrance's legislative priorities for this year. Following these meetings, the committees has forwarded a recommendation for the full City Council for review and consideration. The 2025 legislative platform priority projects have been carefully developed by the City Manager's Office and City Departments, and I would like to highlight the key aspects of this platform for your review. This platform serves as a guiding document that will allow the city to proactively engage with legislation and funding opportunities at federal, state, and regional levels, in alignment with the goals outlined in the adopted strategic plan. The 2025 legislative platform will allow us to advocate effectively, engage with key officials and stakeholders, and pursue funding opportunities vital to the success of these projects. Before we move forward with any action on this item, I would now like to ask staff to provide an overview of the 2025 legislative platform and the priority projects for the Council's review and consideration. Once the overview has been provided, we'll have the opportunity to discuss and provide direction for these priorities. Thank you. I look forward to hearing from our staff. Carlos?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, members of the City Council. Carlos Weiser, Management Associate with the City Manager's Office. Tonight, I will provide a brief overview of the 2025 legislative platform and priority projects. Next slide, please. As we prepare for the upcoming 2025 legislative session, staff has collaborated with both our legislative advocacy consultants and city departments to develop this comprehensive platform. In this presentation, we will outline the key components and benefits of our legislative approach, as well as highlight the priority projects we will be advocating for the upcoming year. Both the state and federal legislative advocacy committees have thoroughly reviewed the legislative platform and identified these priority projects, which we are now presenting to the full City Council for consideration. Next slide, please. First, we'll go through the overview for the legislative platform. Next slide, please. The heart of the legislative platform is the city's strategic plan, which was approved in 2021. This plan serves as a guiding document for the city's progress over a 10-year period. We found that it would be essential that the city's positions on state and federal legislation, including regional, also align with the 11 strategic priorities outlined in the strategic plan, as shown in this slide. This alignment ensures a consistent and cohesive approach, integrating our legislative efforts with the same strategic focus we apply to our budget planning. By doing so, we maintain a unified direction in advancing the city's goals. Next slide, please. There are many goals and positive outcomes from implementing a legislative platform like the one before you see this evening. One of the biggest benefits is it allows staff to streamline the ability to take action in a timely manner for urgent legislation matters. By giving staff a clear roadmap, to prepare letters of support or opposition, we can quickly draft and get those submitted in a timely manner. Often when these things arise, it can be very critical that the city weigh in quickly, often not allowing for public meetings to agendize on a particular topic. With this document, staff can quickly react and make sure that the city's voice is heard. This document also helps city staff when it comes to applying for various grant opportunities or advocating for specific legislation consistent with this document. Finally, approving this document provides the public with a transparent view into the city's stance on various topic areas in an easy-to-digest format. Next slide, please. We'll transition over to our priority projects that have been identified and recommended by our city departments for this upcoming advocacy cycle. These slides will focus on all of the priority projects identified in the legislative platform that will be addressed both at the state and federal level. Next slide, please. The first priority project relates to the Civic Center Master Plan. As we are continuing with our master plan planning processes, it is recommended that we engage with the state legislature to obtain first right of refusal to purchase the state traffic court annex property outlined in red on the slide before you. This approach was used by the city of Norwalk when they secured legislation under Assembly Bill 518, which provided them with a similar authority. As the city continues on the Civic Center master planning exercise, obtaining this property has been seen as advantageous for this effort. Next slide, please. Our second project is to seek support in applying for grant programming that would allow the city to further advance alternative fuel infrastructure initiatives. The city is currently working through the Advanced Clean Fleet Regulation from California Air Resources Board that's increasingly applying stringent emission standards. The city has already begun that process of procuring zero-emission vehicles in compliance with these regulations. The city has projects currently underway, including the Southern California Edison Charge Ready program, and obtaining additional grant funding will help advance these projects to completion, as well as looking for other opportunities for other alternative fuel methods. Next slide, please. Our third priority project relates to advocating for a vehicle code amendment. Most recently, Assembly Bill 917 was approved by the state legislature, which has allowed entities like LA Metro to use automated license plate readers to issue citations for vehicles parked in bus-only lanes. The goal is to expand this through a vehicle code amendment that would apply to all city vehicles to issue citations for parking enforcement issues, not just related to bus-only lanes. This would enable the city to improve upon its National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, compliance efforts under the city's street sweeping program. Next slide, please. Our fourth priority project relates to the city's efforts to implement a citizen broadband radio system, which would provide a citywide private network available for city use. This project also includes an expansion on numbers of cameras throughout the community, about 100, feeding into the city's real-time response center. Next slide, please. Our fifth project relates to replacing outdated equipment, mobile data computers, within the Torrance Police Department. This equipment has met and exceeded its useful life and is a current project that the city is currently undertaking to replace these assets. This request seeks about 100 units at a cost of $7,000 per unit to address the full department's needs. Next slide, please. Our sixth project is our community wellness project that focuses on installing rubberized play surfaces in place of sand or engineered fiber wood chips that would improve ADA accessibility at city parks. Recently, the city has identified that 30 of the city's parks are either fully sand or wood chips or a mixture of rubberized and sand or wood chips. The price tag to upgrade all of these sites is about $14.6 million. The city's adopted capital improvement plan, CIP, has identified a recurring $13 million per year effort funding gap between the funding available for these projects and the identified costs to implement. This funding request seeks to supplement the city's capital improvement plan by allowing the city to advance these efforts at more locations. Next slide, please. Our seventh and last project is the installation of artificial turf at Columbia Park, essentially improving water resiliency and providing year-round play area for soccer fields at this location. The city has been previously awarded $850,000 from Congressman Ted Lieu's office on this effort, and this request essentially will seek to supplement the request by allowing the effort to be fully funded by outside sources rather than relying on the general fund. Next slide, please. So just to give you an overview, we wanted to just give you a briefly overview of past priority projects and our progress in obtaining funding as well as grant opportunities that the city has been successful in. Essentially, last year, the city submitted approximately $13 million worth of appropriation funding to both the state and federal legislation appropriation. For this year, we're currently awaiting confirmation for approximately $3 million of appropriation funding that would potentially be approved by March of this year. The city appreciates Representative Ted Lieu and Maxine Waters for forwarding our applications for consideration. Next slide, please. In 2023 and 2022, the city was successful in obtaining $3.6 million in appropriation funding. Next slide, please. That basically includes various initiatives that would include the Columbia Park Water Conservation Project. That's the $850,000 that we previously have been awarded. Funding to jumpstart the 3290 temporary housing village, as well as the first phase for the Torrance Police Department's body worn and in-car cameras project. Next slide, please. And then in 2021, for our priority projects, the city did receive a total of $13.9 million in appropriation funding. This would support the Torrance Pathway Community Resource and Response Center. That's a combination of both federal and state appropriations, as well as the federal appropriation for the Torrance Airport Stormwater Basin Project. Next slide, please. Apart from the congressional and state appropriations, the city has been successful in being awarded numerous grant programs to support community programming, initiatives, and capital projects. A total of $24.9 million of grant funding has been awarded to the city since 2019. This does not include the appropriation funding that is typically dispersed through a grant program from the administrative agency. One of our most recent grant awards that we have received is through the USDA for the Torrance Farmers Market Promotional Program for $165,730, which will be used to expand access to seniors and residents with disabilities to fresh foods through our farmer market vendors by providing a new pickup hub at 3 library branch locations. Next slide. And then these are just other examples of the different types of grant programs that we received through 2019. Next slide. And next slide. Each year, the city organizes a delegation trip, bringing members of the Legislative Advocacy Committee to Washington, D.C. and Sacramento to meet with elected officials and agencies. These trips provide a crucial opportunity for city representatives to engage directly with federal and state legislators, advocating for essential funding and discussing legislative issues that impact Torrance. Torrance is one of the few cities that maximizes these opportunities by conducting one-on-one meetings with our elected officials and external agencies, allowing us to share our story and priorities effectively. This direct engagement is a key factor in our success in securing funding opportunities. I also want to take the time to express my gratitude to our lobbyist consultants, Van Scoyoc Associates in Washington, D.C., and Joey Gonzalez and Sons in Sacramento, as well as our grant consultant, Blazin Associates, based in Dallas, Texas, for their invaluable support. Their efforts in scheduling meetings, providing timely updates on state and federal issues, and offering analytical insights have been instrumental in helping the city better understand how our legislation impacts our city. Lastly, I do want to take the opportunity to thank each city department for the continued dedication and involvement in ensuring the success of our legislation affairs program. Next slide, please. And essentially, for tonight's item, the committee from both the state and federal legislative advocacy committee is asking for the following actions tonight: to approve the meeting minutes for the December 3rd and December 4th, 2024 meeting minutes, as well as to discuss and provide direction on the legislative platform and priority projects, as well as to provide authority for the committee as well as the delegation team to conduct our delegation trips to Washington, D.C. and Sacramento for 2025. Staff's available for any questions.
Thank you. First of all, anyone from the public wish to speak on this item, please step up to the microphone.
Just a quick note, since we have a lot of money to be throwing around. On these delegation trips, I thought, a very good idea for transparency would be to possibly take a couple of members from this, public, us pubes, with you guys to watch how you guys get our funding and stuff. So since there's money to throw around, why don't you take a few of us on their trips with you?
Anyone else from the public who wishes to speak? I don't see any. Let's bring this back to the council. Any members of the council have questions or comments or? Whoops. Councilman Shake.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, these are 2025 legislative priority projects. Do we have a time frame? When are we completing those projects by chance?
So typically, let the mic work a bit. So typically, the way the appropriation process works is it's a 1-year delay. So this year, even though we're advocating for these projects for 2025, per the federal and state legislature, they're actually considered fiscal year 2026 projects. So we actually won't know whether we would be awarded the funding for these projects until March of 2026. So projects that we advocated last year for 2024, we're still waiting. We're hoping that in March we get these 3 priority projects approved. And then typically there is a time frame. It ranges from a year to a 5-year planning cycle. It really depends on the appropriation account and the guidelines that is set by Congress.
Thank you, Carlos. I've just picked one, Columbia Park. I think we have secured all the funding.
We have not. So far at this point, we've only secured $850,000. This is a multi-million-dollar project that we still have gap funding that we need to cover. So we're going to be asking Congress to reconsider and provide us additional appropriation funding, both at the federal and state level, as well as we continuously look for state grant programs that we can apply for to fill in the gap of funding.
Councilman Sheikh, Your Honor, Danny Santana, City Manager's Office. To add to Mr. Weezar's explanation, there are a number of projects taking place at Columbia Park, and that might be part of your inquiry, Councilman. There's the Internment Memorial Wall. The Community Services Department is working with under a grant to assess the viability of undergrounding or removal of overhead power lines. There's the bocce ball courts, and probably countless others included in the City Council's adopted CIP. But this specific element is related to improving our irrigation and providing more use, play use for the playing fields.
That's the 2.25 million that we, okay. Okay.
And that's in consideration that so far we've been able to secure 850,000.
That is correct.
It is a larger price tag. It's just we're trying to, following mayor and council's direction, seek out as much available funding as we can from external funding sources, and that's what staff is doing.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. I appreciate that. For the turf program, that's we haven't secured any funding. That's what you're saying. That's what we're gonna go for to appropriate.
Councilman, we've secured 850,000 thanks to Congressman Liu. we're looking for the balance funding, so that way we could get the project off the ground.
Thank you, please, sir.
Actually, I had a thought about some of these things, which is, I remember our previous item discussion. We could, for example, if we need a balance of funding for this, if some private-public partnership comes along and decides that they want to help, and maybe all it means is that in the middle of the turf it has their logo on it, that's a possibility, right?
It is, Your Honor. It is something that the city has done in other license agreements or long-term lease agreements. The LA Galaxy Complex is one. The LA Galaxy roller rink at Wilson Park, that's another. So we would welcome the Dodgers, the Lakers, the Clippers, the NFL Rams or Chargers if they're interested. And, we're happy to meet with them.
Well, I think, didn't the Galaxy just win whatever, the Super
First
Bowl
team
soccer?
in the MLS to win this, their championship cup. Six rings that they have.
So maybe they have some funds from winning that, and they can help us get more logos. Okay, any other comments from the council? Because I think we should look at the recommendation because they need direction from us. I guess one is I'm just going by page one to help you out a little, to help us move this along a little bit, because I think I don't know if it's just because it's 11:30 p.m. and-
Your Honor, real quick, if I can add, one thing I forgot to mention in the presentation is we did incorporate changes to the legislative platform based on feedback from the committee. One of them being that initially as one of our priority projects, we were focusing mainly just on EV charging infrastructure, in which the committee had recommended that we look at other alternative fuel initiatives. So that's where we made that modification to that priority project. Secondary is council wanted, or the committee wanted to add kind of like a line item. It would be part of section 4, education, diversity, and enrichment. That's one of the strategic plan goals, where we added a line item to support senior citizen enrichment and education, and providing some narrative of what type of legislation we would be looking for.
I do remember that because I think I'm the one that brought it up, I think. But when you say line item 4, that's not for here.
For clarification, it would be strategic goal 4, which is education, diversity, and enrichment.
Okay. I was flipping. It's not in this
It would be on the legislative platform.
Right. No, understand. Yes, I think these are good goals. I think half of us were on the committee that came up with these. I think we just need to press hard on and push them for these. Carlos, there was another item that we're also, I didn't see it discussed, is consideration of in the future combining these two committees into one committee. Was that supposed to be discussed tonight possibly as well?
Your Honor, that actually would be a separate agenda item.
Ah.
So we are looking at bringing that item for the next council meeting.
Okay. I didn't know. I was wondering that I should bring that up, but okay, it's coming. All right. Let's go with do we have any, maybe I'll ask for a motion at least for the first 3 items on there before, actually all 4, right? Yes. We're just not setting dates yet, but at least we want to approve to do it, right?
Yeah, we're just asking for the authority to conduct the delegation trips, and then we will work with the delegation members on scheduling.
Okay, got it. Go ahead, Councilwoman Lewis.
Make a motion to accept and file the December 2nd, 2024 Legislative Committee minutes. Also to accept and file the December 3rd one, Federal Legislative Committee meeting minutes, and to approve the 2025 delegation trips to Washington, D.C. and Sacramento, California.
Second.
Start voting, please. Your Honor, that motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Let's see. I think I'm going to go to oral communications for the public before I go to closed session. At least let the public do this. Okay? All right. Moving on to oral communications number 2. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comments on items not on the agenda. Under Ralph M. Brown Act, City Council cannot act on items raised during public comment, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. Request clarification, refer to items to staff. Speakers under orals are limited to oral communications number 1, oral communications number 2, and no longer than 1 minute per speaker. Time starts when you step up to the microphone. If presenting handout material to the council, please provide 11 copies to City Clerk before speaking. Handouts will be distributed while you speak. Any members of the public who wish to speak on oral communication number 2, please step up to the microphone.
I was a little late getting here because I had car trouble earlier, but a couple of things that had already happened. But first, I want to say to the fire department and our people who are up there fighting the fires, you're loved and thank you. And it's well worth the money that is spent to train these guys to do what they're doing. So, secondly, I do want to say that back when you discussed the lighting at the facilities, what turned into gels that were just going to be $12,000 for colored gels, now it's turned into what? $100,000 or something, if I'm been hearing correctly. And y'all mocked me for saying that it could turn into something bigger and bigger and bigger. And you swore, oh no, that's not going to happen. And now, you're going to.
Ma'am, your time is up. Anyone else from the public who wish to speak? Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to let the council orals before we go back to closed sessions because people may not be listening to you after that. Okay, Councilwoman Kalani.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to just thank and congratulate the staff for just how well you have positioned Torrance as the place to bring your business and grow your business and live and work and play. It's been exciting for me to watch all of you just pitch white Torrance, and I wanted to congratulate and thank you for that. I also wanted to thank, as the last speaker just said, the people of Torrance, the Torrance businesses, staff, fire department, police department, for your compassion and just your caring nature and your commitment to helping our neighbors. And finally, it's not midnight yet. Happy birthday to my dear husband. He loves Torrance. He's committed to Torrance. He said, go do your thing, Sharon. Maybe he just wanted a night alone, but anyway. Happy birthday to him. And I'll translate in a minute. Tapalodet Mobarak Edishuma Gade Aseman. I love you more than the high sky. The sky is high, and happy birthday. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lewis.
Happy birthday, Omeed.
Okay. Councilman Matucci.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilman Sheikh.
Happy birthday, Omeed. Go home. All right, thank you.
Councilman Gerson.
All right, I'll say a few things this time. Weekend, the Torrance Sister City Association had its annual alumni reunion and introduced 8 of the applicants who are vying for a position. That was a fun event. Happy to give the welcome on your behalf. I got to attend with you and with the mayor and some other members. There was a wonderful Chinese Lunar New Year show held at the Armstrong Theater, and so we spent a few hours there, and that was a lot of fun. Hope to see more Lunar New Year celebrations. And then Councilmember Sheikh and I also got to present to about 40, 45 Cub Scouts and have great Q&A with them as they work to earn their next badge. So some of the fun stuff that happened in the last week or two. And Happy New Year to everyone. It's nice to be back. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kaji.
Thank you. Teach English in Kashiwa, Japan. The Torrance Sister City Association seeks qualified applicants for a one-year English teaching position in Kashiwa, Japan, beginning August 1st, 2025 to July 31st, 2026. The contract is renewable for a maximum 3-year assignment. So the applicant must live or work in Torrance, be fluent in written and spoken English, hold a bachelor's degree plus a teaching credential, have an interest in Japanese language, and represent the Torrance Sister City Association. So for more information, take a look at the Torrance Sister City Association website. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to make some concluding remarks before we go to closed session. Just want to thank you all for participating in this evening's meeting. I want to thank you all for your active participation. And as I see Jin Chung over there, you know, the CES and ICSC, the community engagement team from the city of Torrance has done a superb job in promoting our city, just like what Councilwoman Kalani said. It takes a lot of folks time to think about how we get our messaging out there and articulate it clearly, especially with the recent fires as well. And just want to say I appreciate, you know, all that you do in Team Torrance and the Economic Development Team. Thank you for your effort. And I know that there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work. I know that, you know, Danny is working on letters, trying to reach out to bring on new businesses. And there's a lot of things we're doing in the city of Torrance because we're trying to continue to plant the seeds for a vibrant future in the long term, not just short-term gains, long-term gains. So I just want to say thank you all. It's a new year. I think it's only our first meeting, and looking forward to potentially a lot of new firsts. We did a lot of firsts in 2024, and I think there will be many more in 2025. So with that, we're going to go to closed session. Good night for those of you who will not be returning after we come back for closed session. Thank you. Good morning. We have returned from closed session. And at this moment, City Attorney, anything to report out?
No, Your Honor.
All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn tonight's council meeting.
I move that we adjourn tonight's city council meeting to Tuesday, January 21st, 2025 at 5 p.m. for closed session only in the Leroy J. Jackson Council Chamber.
I second.
Start voting, please. Is he not here? Your Honor, that motion carried with Councilmember Shake absent.
All right. Thank you.